kcisthetown.com. This is an update about Kansas City rapper Fat Tone. Andre Dow and Jason Mathis deleted Fat Tone and Cowboy. Fat Tone thought Andre could help him get a record deal by introducing him to Snoop Dogg in Las Vegas. Andre and Jason backdoored Fat Tone and Cowboy. Jason put hands on his baby's mother, and she told 12 Jason and Andre blicked Fat Tone and Cowboy as revenge for Mac Dre getting ran off the highway in Kansas City. Andre and Jason went to court and lost. 12 got mad and sentenced both men to 4 life sentences without parole. Andre appealed and thought he was getting out. 12 said Andre ain't never getting out. If he die and come back to life, he gotta serve 3 more life sentences without parole. In 2004, Bay Area rapper Mac Dre was killed in Kansas City. There were rumors that Fat Tone was the shooter. However, 12 said the rumors were false. Andre Dow told investigators that he did not believe the rumors. In 2005, Dow invited Fat Tone to Las Vegas to meet Snoop Dogg. Dow was seen on surveillance video leaving a casino with Fat Tone and Cowboy. He claims they went their separate ways. I don't know where they went, but he said he had some business to handle, Andre Dow said. The bodies of Fat Tone and Cowboy were found near a construction site. A vehicle that prosecutors argue was connected to the scene was found torched in California 2 days later. Investigators also pointed to Dow's link to his co-defendant Jason Mathis and a woman who was found murdered in California later that year before Dow was arrested. Mac Minister was featured on America's Most Wanted and arrested soon after. Lamont Marlowe boss Williams, the cousin of Fat Tone, recently said if he didn't pull the trigger, he's just as guilty as the person that did pull the trigger. Cause he set it up. He's most definitely behind it. So yes, most definitely. I'll say it 1,000 times. I'll say it to his face 1,000 times, Marlowe boss said. Jason, baby's mother, said at the end of the Fat Tone story that Mac Minister was going to all the Thiz events collecting money for killing FT.
Because they recently had a lot of Mac Dre functions, that like Mac Dre's birthday and stuff like that, and he have been going to all these functions to collect money from the Vallejo people that actually had a price on those other guys' heads.
Well, tell me about that. How does this murder that we're investigating tie into Mac Dre?
Because he said Fat Tone was supposed to be the actual guy that killed Mac Dre.
Okay. Did you know anything about Mac Dre being killed?
Yeah, I did know about Mac Dre being killed.
What did you know about
Everyone knows Mac. From what I heard, that Mac Dre had got into a car accident and he had flipped over in a car. So I'm asking Jason, I thought it was a car accident, and he said no, Fat Tone shot Mac Dre and made him get into it, and that which forced him to get into a car accident.
This is Jay Diggs. So allegedly, Jay Diggs and others put money on Fat Tone's head, and Mac Minister and Jason collected. Okay, ain't nobody checking for Mac Minister, so I don't know why he trying to get out. Bro, ain't nobody checking for Mac Minister out here, trying to buy a Mac Minister song. Mac Minister, aka Andre Dow, and Jason Mathis is where they need to be, where they deserve to be. Because if they get out, they gonna blick another rapper. Long live Mac Dre. Long live Fat Tone. I'm out of here.
A possible feud, connections to big names like Snoop Dogg, and now one man who claims he's been wrongfully convicted. It's all part of a criminal case that just took a turn.
Only the 8 News Now investigators have been following the battle brewing in court. Vanessa Murphy has been speaking with the man at the center of it all.
Denise and Brian, rapper Mac Minister insists he's an innocent man. He's been telling me this during phone calls from prison, and he's alleging this in court. But prosecutors argue there are too many connections between Mac Minister and 3 people who wound up dead.
They got me yelling, the law.
Andre Dow, also known as Mac Minister, was an up-and-coming West Coast rapper in the early 2000s, but that came to a halt.
They gave me 4 lives without the possibility of parole.
Dow was convicted in 2008 for a double murder in Las Vegas in 2005. The victims, Kansas City rappers Anthony Watkins, known as Fat Tone, and Jermaine Atkins, known as Cowboy.
I don't know who killed Fat Tone.
How did they end up murdered in your girlfriend's car?
I don't have no answer for that.
I just want to make a record. He testified against my client in trial. I know.
As attorney Robert DeMarco argues for Dow's freedom, the 8 News Now investigators have been following closely. One major development, this witness who testified against Dow now says he lied.
It's been under conscience and you deeply regret making the false testimony and statements against Mr. Dow, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Lateef Gray, please.
A former San Francisco prosecutor who knew Dow growing up heard him proclaiming his innocence on a podcast and decided to look into the case. Do you believe he's 100% innocent?
I do. Based on this evidence, I do.
Lateef Gray says he uncovered information about witness Antoine Mouton, a convicted pimp with a lengthy criminal history. Records show when he claims he was in Las Vegas and Dow made incriminating statements to him, he was actually in custody in Georgia. So you believe that the police and the prosecutors had all of this information and hid it? Or what are you saying?
They definitely had.
Sometime prior to that December 5th.
Clark County Chief Deputy District Attorney Mark DiGiacomo mentioned a date during Dow's murder trial in reference to that supposed conversation between Dow and Mouton in Las Vegas. But again, Mouton was locked up in Georgia. DiGiacomo now on the stand himself admitting to what he calls a mistake.
You said December 5th in the deposition, correct?
And I should have said December 05.
Still, he continues to defend the murder conviction.
I have the phone records and the 911 calls establishing the timeline.
In 2004, Bay Area rapper Mac Dre was killed in Kansas City. There were rumors, which police said were false, that Fat Tone did it. Dow claims he didn't think so. In 2005, he invited Fat Tone to Las Vegas to meet Snoop Dogg. Dow is seen leaving a casino with Fat Tone and Cowboy. He claims they went their separate ways.
I don't know where they went, but he says he has some business to handle.
The bodies of Fat Tone and Cowboy found near a construction site. A car, which prosecutors argue was connected to the scene, found torched in California 2 days later. Police also pointed to Dow's link to his co-defendant Jason Mathis and a woman who was found murdered in California later that year before Dow was in custody.
You cannot point to any specific evidence that points to Mr. Dow committing the murder of Miss Larson in California, correct?
Well, I think that if I were to try him in this courtroom, I'd convict him every day of the week.
Dow was on America's Most Wanted and then arrested.
If he didn't pull the trigger, he's just as guilty as the person that did pull the trigger.
Lamont Williams, also known as Marlo Boss, is Fat Tone's cousin.
He's most definitely behind it. So, yes, most definitely. I said it 1,000 times. I said it in his face 1,000 times.
After hearing from both sides,
This is totally a travesty of justice.
a judge will decide whether Dow deserves freedom.
My name ain't Mac Minister, it's Mac Minister.
Prosecutors argue key witness Antoine Mouton may have felt pressured to recount his story, but Mouton and his father, who also testified, claim he just wanted to do the right thing. That decision from the judge could come any day now. Andre Dow isn't getting out of prison anytime soon. An attempt by the West Coast rapper known as Mac Minister to get his murder conviction tossed out failed. Clark County District Court Judge Michelle Levitt denied his request after hearing hours of testimony.
I'm here for 2 counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder. They gave me 4 lives without the possibility of parole.
Dow was convicted in 2008 for double murder in Las Vegas in 2005. The victims, Kansas City rappers Anthony Fat Tone Watkins and Jermaine Cowboy Akins.
How did they end up murdered in your girlfriend's car?
I don't have no answer for that.
Dow spoke with the 8 News Now investigators from prison several times in 2022. He also participated in podcasts, which Judge Levitt refers to in her order. Dow insisted witness Antoine Mouton lied. Judge Levitt writes, Dow posted Mouton's personal information and talked about how he testified against him on a podcast. 2 days later, Mouton filled out a document changing his story. The judge questions Mouton's motivation and credibility.
Someone here in Las Vegas helped you prepare this affidavit?
I really don't ask too many questions, man. I'll just, whatever it is, I need to get done. I'll get it done. I'll just get it done.
I decided to look into it.
Judge Levitt also calls out this former San Francisco prosecutor in her order. Lateef Gray says he started looking into the Nevada case after he heard Dow on a podcast.
Do you believe he's 100% innocent?
I do. Based on this evidence, I do.
Gray claims he uncovered information which he believes prosecutors withheld. Judge Levitt calls some of his testimony here inaccurate and points out how he knew Dow since they grew up in the same neighborhood, something we previously asked Gray about.
It's irrelevant.
A prosecutor recently admitted he made a mistake during the trial at least twice when referring to a time frame. But Judge Levitt also writes Dow failed to prove prosecutors withheld information from the defense, and she calls his fight untimely since it's 11 years later. Vanessa Murphy, 8 News Now.
And Vanessa reached out to Andre Dow's attorney, Robert DeMarco. He said he is disappointed in the judge's decision and that Dow is evaluating his legal remedies. He expects he will appeal the judge's ruling.